Hi, my name is Lucas and welcome to my Ruby on Rails video tutorial. This tutorial is aimed at complete beginners who never programmed Ruby on Rails but want to try it out and are overwhelmed with the complexity. Basically, the idea came up because I did the Ember.js video tutorial a few months back, and some people have actually written in the comments on YouTube and Vimeo and also emailed me that I should do a Ruby on Rails tutorial. So yeah, I want to try, and I will fail because it's impossible to explain even the basics of Rails in 30 minutes, I think. But yeah, I'll just try, and I hope you can get something out of it. Again, I will do it like in the Ember.js tutorial. I will show you a small application I've written, and afterwards we will go through the code and I will explain to you how it works. So first of all, let me start the application. To start the application, we write Rails server, and what it does is it starts a local web server on port 3000. So if we go to localhost 3000, we get the web application. It's always tricky to come up with good examples, but I like to watch Star Trek, especially the Next Generation, and I thought, okay, let's do a management software for a starship crew. So what we have here is the list of officers. We have Captain Picard, Commander Riker, Mr. Data, and so on. And they all have certain properties. The rank, we know that Captain Picard is in fact the captain. And the section. The section can be something like command or technical or science. And yeah, in the shirt color, in this case it's red. And what we can do is we can look at the entries. So you can see Captain John Picard is in command. We can edit them. So I can write Picard with 2 C's, which is wrong, but I can do it because it's to show you how it works. And now we have Picard with double C. We can delete the people, and we can also promote and demote them. So let's say Captain Picard did a good job. I want to promote him. I click here, and now he's an admiral. And actually, I cannot promote him further because that's the highest rank we have. Let's make him a captain again. We can take Dr. Crusher. We can see she's Lieutenant Commander, which is correct according to the TV show. But she isn't assigned to a section, so I can edit her, and I can say she's in medical. You can see it now in the recording, but because it's cut off. But yeah, I've assigned her to medical. I update her, and if we go to the main page, you can see her shirt color changed to blue, and her section is medical. What we also can do is we can go to the sections view, and it shows us who is assigned to a particular section. So we have in command Captain Picard and Mr. Riker. In science we have data, and so forth. You can see we have people like Wesley Crusher and Mr. LaForge who are not assigned. They do not show up in the sections list. What we can also do is we can create new officers. You can see it here very well, but there is a button. I can't click it because my CSS is broken. So I just write / officers new. That's what would happen if I click the button on the index page. We would have gone to this URL, and we can create a new officer. So let's say we have a new ensign. Her name is Roe, and she's a red shirt in Next Generation, I think. So we put her to command and create her. And we have a new entry for Ensign Roe, and she's done a good job. So let's promote her to lieutenant. And that's it. Yeah, that's basically the app. I wanted to show you something with two models. We have the sections and the officers, and we have a relationship between them. And I hope this is a good example. You can of course download it from my GitHub and play around with it yourself. Alright, let's get to the code. let's see, where do we start? I assume you speak the Ruby programming language. If not, I suggest you learn it. It's a fun language to learn. Actually, I think it's the reason we enjoy working with Ruby on Rails so much, partly because of the Ruby programming language itself. It's a highly dynamic language. Some of the people that are comfortable with Java or C++ will get uncomfortable at first with Ruby because yeah, it's just so dynamic. But I'm confident if you get into it, you will enjoy it. But let's assume you speak Ruby. You know there are gems. Gems are libraries, and in a typical Ruby on Rails application, you have a gem file. I think it's mandatory now in the new Rails. It wasn't before Rails 2 point and 1 point something. Yeah, we just write here what we need. So we say we take Rails and we want the 4.0 beta. We want MySQL 2 for our database adapter. We want less. Less is just less annoying style sheets. It's better than CSS. You can do more with it. We take Twitter Bootstrap. Twitter Bootstrap is basically the CSS. You know, in the Ember.js, I was using, what was I using? I was using a similar framework. This time we are using Twitter Bootstrap, which gives us CSS for tables and pull-down menus and buttons and whatnot. So that's that. Yeah, this is all standard stuff. We use the debugger in development. Actually, this should be probably group development to debugger and so on. I'll just leave it for now. And yeah, for assets we have CoffeeScript. We have Sass also. So we have less and Sass. Less is for Twitter Bootstrap. Sass is for the built-in style sheets, I think. I don't know. It's just what the Rails community has decided to be the default, but you can change it. It's a nice thing, you can change everything. We have a JavaScript runtime and so forth. So yeah, you define what you need in your gem file. You use the gem code bundler to install these gems and to have them available for your application when you run it. But I want to keep it basic, so I'll just skip over this subject. The next thing we should talk about is the mapping between, basically between your URL and what you see on screen here. Ruby on Rails is a typical MVC application. So you have your models, your controllers, and your views. And basically, just to quickly explain, the models are a representation or a mapping between your data in the database and your Ruby objects, which you can use to conveniently manipulate the database content without having to write SQL, right? So we have this model layer, and we talk to the models, which in turn affects the contents of the database. So we have the models. In our case, we have officers and sections, these two. And for each model, we have a corresponding controller, the officers controller and the sections controller. What the controller does, it's like a mediator. It gets the request from the browser when the user enters a URL or presses a button or whatever, and it fetches data using the models, and it displays data using the views. So again, for the views, we have the officers views and the sections views. In our case, in Ruby on Rails, you have a separate HTML file or ERB file for each action. So if we go to sections, this corresponds to the action in controllers called index, so it would render this template. And I will not get into ERB, but if you have worked with PHP or Java or whatever, Java's JSP and so forth, it's the same stuff. You have HTML and there is inline Ruby code. For example, here we iterate through all the sections we got from the controller. This is an instance variable in the controller, and we display a row for each of them. So I'm sure you can figure it out yourself, but I'll just skip quickly over it. Yeah, so model, views, and controllers, right? When we're using the browser, we are talking to the web server using HTTP. We cannot see it in modern browsers, but usually we used to have this HTTP :/URL scheme, which you could see, and HTTP means Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So what it means is that the web server needs three things from us. It needs the URL, it needs a method, and it needs data. So the methods are, let me just write it here, they are get, put, patch, post, delete. I think that's all of it. Right? So if we enter a URL here, we are doing a get on this URL, or more specifically on this host, this port, and this path. And the third thing it needs is data. But we don't have data in this get request, but we might have it in a patch, put, or post, right? So yeah, it needs three things from us. And one of the things Ruby on Rails is good at is translating these URLs into controller methods. Basically, if you write this, we want Rails to execute the index action in our sections controller. If we enter this URL, we want this action to be executed. Right? So how do we do it? In Rails, we define routes. So we go into the config directory, you can see a file called routes.rb. It's this one. And what we do, we define the routes for application. We use a shorthand here, keyword resources, and the name of the controller basically. And what it does, it creates the default routes. So it creates the get sections for us. It creates the post sections for us. It creates the get sections, get the second section for us, right? And so forth. You can see all of them if you open a console. Delete this. And you enter rake routes. Rake is a Ruby tool, make for Ruby, right? And we call the task called routes. What it does, it reads the contents of the config /routes.rb file and displays the routes to us. At least it should. There it is. The computer is getting slow. And yeah, you can see all the routes we have here. So you see that the URI sections with the method, or the verb in this case, they call it the verb, get, translates to the sections controller and the index action. That's the mapping. And if you look at sections, we get the defaults. We get the index, the create, new, the edit, the show, the update, and the update with the patch, which is new in Rails, and the destroy for free, just by writing this. By the way, if you go to the official Ruby on Rails webpage, there's a good guide for it. Just search for routes Rails. And this one. And you can see a list here. So this is what you get. You should basically, if you want to read Ruby on Rails, you should read all the guides at this URL at guides.rubyonrails.org. Right? Okay, back to our application. We define this thing for the sections, but we also have the officers model, and the officers model is basically the same, except we have two extra routes in this case for the promote and demote actions, and we want to be able to do a post on them. So if we look at the officers, we get the defaults, but we also want these two. So the way to do it is to simply write member, do, and then the names of them. And if you write member, it means whatever happens here affects an instance, so it affects a specific officer, not all of them. If you wanted to have something that affects the whole collection, you could do something like this. Let's say the whole enterprise crew needs to be demoted. Demote all. I would write it like this, and if I do the right parts again. We get a new route called demote all, and you can see in the URL it's just /officer /demote all, whereas in the case of the member we have the ID in between. So the URL would be officers /some ID /promote. Let me show you in the browser. Basically we have officers 1, 2, and so forth, right? So these are the member routes, and this is a collection route where we don't have an idea. So yeah, that's where you define all those things, all your routes. And finally we have this directive here. It means if no path is entered, or it's just / go to officers index. And yeah, this is what happens if you don't enter anything. It's the same as if you wrote officers because of this line. Actually, if you install a new Rails application, you can see some examples here in routes.rb. So check it out. There's many more things you can do, like URL rewriting and some nice SEO-friendly URLs and so forth. Okay. Of course, the whole application is backed by a database. All these things here are stored in a MySQL database. So while I'm in this directory, let's take a look at config /database.yml, and here we just configure the database. We are using this environment development, which is something you can set with an environment variable in your terminal, and or on the command line. But this is the default one. It just means use the adapter MySQL2. If you remember, we defined it in the gem file. Connect to the database called Starship app with the username root without a password on this host and this port. So straightforward. What's nice, you can define different settings for different environments. So if you want to run our tests, we would create a different database because we didn't want to have the test run delete all our development data, right? So this is separate, and in production we would have different settings, but we are just here for this tutorial. Yeah, so it's basically all a MySQL database that stores the data for us. Let's see, I will skip all of these things. I think they are too advanced for this tutorial. Let's talk about models, views, and controllers. Alright, so I've shown you this. This is our Office's controller. And when we go to this URL, this gets executed. And what it does, again, I'm assuming you know the Ruby programming language. What it does is it fills the instance variable called officers with the result of this method call. And this is our officer model class. And this is the method we're calling on it. And this actually returns an array of our officers, so it returns PK, Riker data, and so forth, and stores them here. And then this is implicit; it's not shown here explicitly. It does this thing. It's render template index. I think that's how you write it. But if you don't write this, it's the default. So it would render the index template. And you see it uses the variable, the instance variable we have set in a controller in the template. It uses it to display the data. So we have this iteration here. Everything that's written between these special tags is Ruby code. Everything else is HTML code. And you can see we loop to the officer, to the officers. This is Ruby block syntax. Okay, I will not talk about Ruby. I assume you speak the language. And yeah, we just print things out. This means get a string representation of whatever this is here. So basically, officer.rank is a string value on officer, commander, captain, lieutenant, and so forth. And so forth. We have a section. Here we get some nice things which are included in Ruby on Rails, like the link to helpers. So this thing defines a link to this URL. By the way, this you know these things from the console here. So we have promote officer, and if we attach the underscore path, this will evaluate to the URL without the hostname part, and we can pass an officer to it, or officer.id. So it would create the correct URL with this format to call the action. Just check out active action view helpers, I think they are called, and you will see a lot of these things like link to or image tag and so forth. But again, I only have 30 minutes, so I will skip this. But yeah, this is what happens. And it's very similar for the other actions. So one thing here, for example, you cannot see anything being defined in show, but obviously we need an officer in show too. We do it in a before action, and it means call this method before you call the actual method you wanted to call. So every time we call show, we actually call this method first, which is defined down here, and it sets the officer for us. Because it's repeating code, we would have to write it in show, in edit, in update. We basically take it out and use this here because as Ruby programmers we don't want to repeat ourselves. And this is a common pattern you will see. But again, it would be the same to write this here. And while I'm here, the params hash is filled with the data that is submitted through the URL, through the HTTP request. In this case, it's ID, and the ID happens to correspond to this ID because we are talking about the show action. So if I write a URL /section/4, params ID will be 4. Again, Ruby knowledge. This is a hash. This is a key. This is similar to a string. It's a Ruby symbol, and it would evaluate to whatever we passed in. So it would be a 2 if we wrote this. But we don't write it because we have the before action. And yeah, we render the template. So because I'm running out of time, I'm already talking for 24 minutes, I will quickly talk about the models. Let's take a look at the officer. So what we have here is the mapping between the database table officers and the officer class in Ruby. Let me show you how a database looks like. We can do this by calling Grails, by running Grails DB console. What we get here is this is basically a MySQL prompt. It's the same as if we called the MySQL interpreter through Bash. Yeah, so we can show tables. You can see we have the officers and the sections. We also have schema migrations. Again, this is a more complex topic. I don't want to talk about it right now. And it means it stores migration information here, so it knows what the current version of the database model is, database schema is. Yeah. Let's take a look at officers. Describe officers. You can see how our tables look like. We have a primary key called ID. This is standard. By the way, most of the things in Ruby on Rails are standardized. So we use an approach called convention over configuration. So every model would typically have an ID field. There are exceptions though. Yeah, we have a rank, which is that's the char array. We have a name, which is also a string. We have created that and updated that, just timestamps. And we have a section ID, which is a reference to our sections table. So if we show you data, select everything from officers. We have Captain Jean-Luc Picard. He belongs to section 1, right? So this is our reference. Back to the model. If we write this in our Rails model definition, it means it is associated to a section, and it also means every section has one or more officers associated with it. But this basically tells Rails if you want to have the section for the officer, look at the section ID field. Right. So if we take a look at the sections. You can see they are much simpler. You just have an ID and the name. There is no reference because the reference is on the side of the officers. Just to complete command, engineering, and so forth. Right. So yeah, this is pretty typical, and this is one of the reasons why Ruby on Rails is so much fun to work with, because we can do these things easily. We don't have to write any SQL statements. We just write things like this. Of course, you have to learn this. There's tons of things you can learn, but once you do, it's a lot of fun to use. It's very easy to use, and you can develop even complex applications quite easily. So after we've been on the SQL level, let me show you what we actually will work with, and this is the Ruby level, of course. So I'm not writing DB console. Oops. I'm just writing console this time, and what we get a Ruby interpreter with our application loaded already. So this is a Ruby shell with our development environment loaded. So now we can do things like officer, and it's loaded. It's already loaded our class. We don't have to require any modules, and it's basically the same, right? This is what I wrote above here with the describe, but now I've got a Ruby representation of it, and I can do officer first actually. It shows us what SQL query is executed. It is select officers star from officers order by officers ID. And give us the first one, limit 1, and in this case we get a Captain Picard entry. We could also do officer find 3. So we would get the one with the ID 3. And this is 10 commando data. And so far we could also do fancy things like officer where rank like this is the 10th commando. Let's get all the 10 commandos. So we get 3 of them. We get Mr. Data, we get Diana Troy, and Dr. Crusher. Right? So yeah, this is the main selling point for Rails, in my opinion. This easy mapping between the Ruby world, where we work with objects. We get if we write like this, Lieutenant commanders. So we have an array here. Yeah, it's the mapping between the Ruby world and the SQL world, which is very nicely implemented indeed. And it's due to the nature of the Ruby programming language, because it's so dynamic, these things are rather easy to make. What else? Yeah, I'm already talking for half an hour, but let me just get through this model quickly. We have validations. Validations help us ensure that our data makes sense. So again, you would have to go to guides.rubyonrails.org to check these things out, but basically we have lines like these here. This means the field's name and rank must be filled out, and the rank must be one of the ranks defined in this directory. I just said inclusion in this array. So let's create a new officer, officer new, and let's say his name is O'Brien, because we forgot the transporter chief. And now I want to save him to the database, which I would usually do with the save call. It doesn't work. It tries to save and it does the rollback. And why? Because it's invalid. You can ask it, is it valid? No. So why not? The rank cannot be blank, and it's not one of the ranks included in the list. Alright, I forgot. So let's write here's a lieutenant. And now you can see the insert was executed, we got true as a result, and O'Brien is inserted. By the way, if we go to the website now, to the web application, we have Lieutenant O'Brien here, which we just created on the console, because there is no difference if we call it manually using the interpreter or if it's executed automatically, because somebody entered the URL or made an HTTP request. Alright? We can there is many validations. You can look them up again in the Rails routes, Rails validations. We get the guides rubyonrails.org result, which is the right one. But there is lots of things you can look up. Acceptance, blah 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 blah. Confirmation must be present. It must have a certain length. It must be a number and so forth. It must be numeric in this case, only integers, so no floats. Yeah, check it out. And it's again a selling point for Ruby on Rails, because this is very easy to do. You can even do your own validations. I have one here in this example. It's called captain must be in command, and what it does is it ensures that the captain cannot be reassigned to technical, for example, because if I click update, it throws an exception. It says section invalid, a captain must be assigned to command. And what I do in the model, I have a method with this name here. It's a private method, and it just checks if the rank, again, of the instance of the current officer we are talking about is captain, but his section isn't command, then we add this to our validation errors. Captain must be assigned to command. So we have custom validations. Here is a method called shirt color. As you've seen, we have the shirt colors here. So if I took, let's say, Deanna Troy, and I put her to medical, she would get a blue shirt. And this is because in our view template we're calling the shirt color method for the officer, and the shirt color method is this one here. And what it does, it gets the section from for this officer, which is evaluated using this relationship here. So it looks at the section ID, fetches the section, and then it calls the shirt color method on the section if it exists. So it could be nil because the officer is not assigned. So in this case, of Wesley Crush or Mr. LaForge, it would be empty. It would be empty string here. If we look at section, there is our short color method, and it just looks at its own name. So if it's command, return red. If it's science, return yellow. And yeah, if it doesn't know, just return gray. And what I do here, I just show you officer's index. I just add it as a class here. So if you look at our style sheets and asset style sheets application, I think I've defined these. By the way, I'm defining them important because I'm lazy, but I want to override the Twitter Bootstrap styles here. So that's what it does. Yeah, writing back web applications is always looking at 10 different places and then have it all come together. Yeah. So yeah, that calls the shirt color. Oops, where is my officer class? It's here. We have the methods promote and demote. Again, in our officers controller, when we use the post method on the promote URL, the officer gets fetched here in our private method, and then the promote method is called on the officer. Basically means get the current rank of the person. So if we have an ensign, it would look here and say, okay, the index is 1, and then give us the next higher one, unless we are already admiral. So if we are admiral, we cannot go any higher, and then save. And so to show you in console, we have still have Chief O'Brien, and he's a lieutenant, and we want to promote him. Oops. You can see that an update is issued because we have to save here. By the way, we can get the shirt color. It's empty because he has no section associated with himself. So let's take a section for him. Okay, let's see, what sections do we have? Section, actually I just want to have the names. So I use convenient mapping that Ruby provides. Let's say just give me the names. Okay, so now we can find a section where name is transporter room. We just want the first one. We get it here. And now we can say O, which is Chief O'Brien's officer record, O section equals S. And then we just save the officer. You can see update officers, set section ID 5, where officer ID is 10. And this is the Rails magic. We don't have to write section ID equals section.id. We just assign them like this because it's clear what it means. It's more expressive to do it this way. And now if we just clear the screen, O shirt color, we get yellow. Because it has a section associated with it, right? O.section shirt color. We can call it like this. But we just say O shirt color. Oops. So we are having a transitive relationship here. We're using it to write less code and make pretty applications quicker. Finally, I want to talk about class methods. So again, these are all instance methods. Instance method means we have an instance of the officer class, and we execute methods on it. But because in Ruby everything is an object, we can also use class methods, and they are just depicted by the self dot, or I could also write something like this. Yeah, and wrap it in it, but yeah, let's just stick with the self keyword. Should let me restart the console so it picks up the change in the model. Maybe it would pick it up anyway, but let me do it. And what we are doing here is we want to have all the officers in a particular section. So we call the class method where. It's a class method. It's the same thing basically as this one. on the section class object, and we query all the sections with the section we get all the sections. No, wait, let me explain it properly. We get the section that corresponds to this name, and then because we are working with the officer class, so basically this means the same as this. We don't need to write it because we are already working with the officer class. We get all officers that are in the section. So again, if we do it like this, officer last, we should get Chief O'Brien, right? We cannot do officers in command, doesn't work, but we can do officers in command because we are calling a class method. And we get this association, which basically means we get an array of officers which have the section command assigned to it, so it should be 3, right? Yeah, ensign roll and the first officer and the captain. I hope you can see how powerful this is and why everybody loves Ruby on Rails, because it's very easy to write these things. Alright, put out again. Basically, I think this is more than enough for a quick tutorial, and I'm not sure if any of this helps you to get into Ruby on Rails programming, but once you clear the learning curve in the beginning, you will not want to go back anymore, because this is just good stuff. Look at how little code I had to write to make all this happen. Of course, there are thousands of files here. Okay, not thousands, but there are dozens of files here that I did not get into. We have the JavaScript directory. We have our JavaScripts defined. We have let me just directly have different style sheets. They get loaded. They are structured depending on what they are referring to. So the officers CSS file that should contain styles for the officers. But as you can see, I wrote this stuff in my application CSS and so forth. I shouldn't do that. We have the application controller. If you have been paying attention, you can see that the officers controller inherits from application controller, and this allows us to do funny things. We can write methods here and before actions that should affect all officers controllers. Again, the focus in Ruby on Rails and in Ruby general is don't repeat yourself, so you want to write as little code as possible. So this is a way to do it on the controller level. We have our helpers. Helpers are methods that you would use when rendering your views. You can have a helper that that converts your currencies or formats your time in a certain way. You would put them here. You have the mailers, which are objects that are instances of the actual mailer class, which is if you want to send emails to your customers or your users. We have concerns. This is new, relatively new stuff introduced in Rails 4. We'll not get into it. In views, we have our layouts. Typically, we have at least the application HTML or ERB. If you paid attention, you saw that in our index class, what we have here is not a complete web page. What's missing is everything before and after this part, and it's defined in application HTML.erb. And yeah, it renders all this stuff. It renders our sidebar and so forth. But whatever we have defined in here is inserted here. Yield. And yeah, this executes code, which in turn renders the contents of these template files here. So just to get you started, we have an application HTML ERB, which is the shell for your content, and the content goes where the yield keyword is written. You can have multiple of these, but again, advanced topic. In the bin directory, you have your bundle, your Rails array command, whatever, don't need to worry about it right now. Config environment, this gets important when you're about to deploy your application on the internet. The initializers are important if you want to set up stuff every time the application loads. Locales are interesting when you are translating your application, so you might want to have a German version or a French version, or whatever. You would create different YAML files for your strings. What else? Application.rv is just default setup stuff. You will tweak it when you get more advanced, I'm sure, but for the beginning, we have the lib folder. What is important, and what I completely left out, is the DB folder. And in Rails, you create migrations. So what I didn't show you, but actually, let me show you. I mean, this is important. So let's leave it. Let me drop the database, so it's deleted after after this command finishes. If we now wanted to refresh, we will get an exception because unknown database, it doesn't exist. So what do? We do a rake db create. This creates the database. But it still doesn't work because we have migrations that haven't run. So we have the database, but it's empty. So I could probably MySQL use root database starship app. Oh, this show tables, and it's empty. So what do? We do rake db migrate, and this creates the tables for the application. This creates the officers table and the sections table. So if we do this again, we have them here. However, if we select star from officers, it will be an empty set because there is nothing here. But our application will run, it will just be empty. So finally, let me execute rake db seed, which will just insert some seed data into the database, so I can show you how it works. So, no password. And now if we go to officers, we have some data, and the app looks like it did in the beginning when I started the tutorial. Right. So what happened? db create is just issues commands to the SQL server to create a database, but the migrate actually looks at the contents of db/migrate, and we have migrations defined here. Create officers is one of these migrations. This change method gets called, and here we create a table officer with the string rank and the string name and the timestamps. Timestamps are, as I said before, it's the created at and the updated at. Right? We don't need them for our application, but it's common to have them because we want to do some sorting. Give me the last one, enter it. Actually, you could use the ID for that. The ID, by the way, isn't mentioned here; it's implicit. Yeah, you might want to have the timestamps, right? Yeah, so this gets called. These things are called, if you pay attention here, this is a timestamp, so they get called in the right order, and actually whatever got executed here, this gets inserted into the schema migrations table I've shown you before. So show tables. Select star from schema migrations. These things, this just means this is the latest one I've executed, and this happens to be this one, right? So they correspond. Yeah, so we create our officers, we create our sections, but as you can see, I forgot the ID, the section ID field here. So I created another migration, and I'm just adding a column called section ID on the officers table and declare it the type of integer. What's good about this, I can do rollbacks. So if I made a mistake here and I wrote something stupid, I could always, even with data present, I could do a rake db rollback, and this would take back my mistake, and I could change it and migrate again. Very convenient. Make sure if you're starting with Rails, you use these methods. Do not create your database by hand using SQL. Don't use any tools like some SQL admin tools. Don't use them. Use these things, because if you do it manually, you will mess up your migrations and it will not be clean. So once again, you go to the browser and you can say Rails migrations in the search engine. You get the guides rubyonrails.org, and you just read all of it, which will take you a day to understand fully, I think, and you learn these things. Right. Finally, schema RB. RB is like a dump of the results. So you could load the schema directly without going through the migrations, and it would have the same effect. This is created after these things have run through. And as shown you, I've issued the command rake dvseed. What it does, it executes whatever is in here. And here you can see it's just a script. It means where I said create the sections and create the officers. Create, by the way, is like new, except the save is implicit. And you can do things like this, where you just pass an array of data and it executes it. You can see some have a section defined. This is calling a helper method here. This one. Some don't. So Beverly Crusher didn't have a section, so it wasn't assigned. Right, this was the DB directory, very important. Lib, yeah, you can, the rake tasks are usually special tasks you write yourself, you would put here. Maybe you have some helper methods, helper classes here, you would put them in lib. Yeah, if you're a programmer, you will, you know the difference between a framework and a library, and libraries go here. Log directory contains the development log in my case. So it's a little bit crappy here, but these are basically color codes. So if you read it in a console, this will look pretty. The public directory is static content. You would typically configure your web server to fetch these things directly. Things like the robots.txt. Hello search, and I change it here, and I go to localhost 3000 robots.txt, get the static content. The test folder, very important, because in Ruby on Rails we test our applications thoroughly. Once you get into testing, you realize that it's much more convenient and much quicker to write the tests first and then write the rest of the application. You will know it works without even having to fire up the browser. Also, in the long run, it will make your application. You will avoid the regressions. If you test everything you write in, you will always know if your new change didn't break some old functionality. And Rails creates these things for you. Right. This is some default stuff. Take a look at it, but yeah, you should definitely test. TMP is just variables that get deleted after you restart or redeploy or whatever, your PIDs, your socket files, and so on. Vendor used to have a plugins directory, but in Rails 4 they kind of ditched it, and everything has to be a gem. But if you like, you can still use plugins. I think that you have to set it up. So yeah, I think that's it. This is the little application you can download from GitHub. I've talked for almost an hour, which is amazing. I didn't plan to, and there is much more to say about Ruby on Rails. But I hope by watching this video I helped to get you started somehow, right? So you have to be aware of the model view controller stuff, you have to be aware of the database, you have to know how HTTP works, you have to know that basically everything we do in the web is sending a request to a server and getting a response from the server. And the request is typically just text data, and you get back text data, and this translates into a website. There is more advanced topics like Ajax, where you send requests in the background without reloading. There is turbolinks in Rails 4, which, let me just say, it helps you render your pages faster and helps you send less data over the network. There is tons of things you can do. You can use different databases from Rails. You can use millions of, I think there must be a million gems by now. Just go to GitHub and look at Ruby gems. So yeah, I hope you still enjoyed this video, and let me know if there is anything specific that you want to discuss. Also, go to railscasts.com to get much better video tutorials on certain subjects. Here we have one about model caching. Here we have, if you're a beginner, this will not be interesting for you. But yeah, how to handle exceptions, how to test faster, how to do performance tests, and so forth. This is a great website. And I think most of the Ruby on Rails programmers are subscribed here. At least the ones I know, they are all subscribed here, and yeah, they pay Ryan to create these videos. So thank you, and have fun, and yeah, learn Ruby on Rails, because the web is here to stay, I think. Bye bye.